Hi, everyone. My name is Andy Hagerman. I'm a lifelong musician, and over the last 10 years, I've served as Avid's training manager for the Asia Pacific region. I'm creating this video in cooperation with Alex Brook from Audio Solutions Japan, who have also helped in translating Avid's Pro Tools 101 and 110 books into Japanese. In the audio industry, when you talk about Pro Tools, you're talking about the DAW that the industry has chosen as their standard. That's a great thing for those of us in the business. We can go to studios at any level worldwide and will very likely see Pro Tools there. That also means that the Pro Tools skills that we build in our bedroom studios and in classrooms can take us anywhere we want to go in the industry. Now, a couple of things that have always been limiting factors in the face of such a powerful industry standard have been the varying powers of computers and the huge variety of plugins out there. What plays flawlessly on your studio system might not play back as well on your laptop, and if you've not purchased plugins that your collaborators have, you might be out of luck. Or you were out of luck until recently. The recent advances in Pro Tools since version 11, in particular offline bounce, track commit, and now track freeze, have improved things immensely. This video will focus on track freeze and how it can help you make the most of your Pro Tools system. Put simply, track freeze allows Pro Tools users to free up resources by rendering a track or multiple tracks with a single click. This greatly improves the power of any Pro Tools system without compromising your creative workflow. Frozen tracks can be quickly unfrozen, changed, and refrozen anytime you want. Certainly there are other DAWs out there that have some form of this feature, but the implementation in Pro Tools is a great combination of simplicity and flexibility. Let's take a look. Here we have a very simple session. One audio track, one instrument track. Both of them have sends on them that are going to an aux input track, upon which we have a reverb. To control the total output, we have a master fader. As with most things in Pro Tools, there are a number of ways to get the job done. First, you could go to the track drop-down menu and choose freeze. This will freeze all selected tracks. Or, if you want to freeze an individual track, you could right-click on the track name and choose freeze. And maybe this is the simplest way. You can just click on this small snowflake-looking icon on the track that you want to freeze. A frozen track looks different from a non-frozen track, and that difference varies depending upon the track type. If you freeze an audio track, you'll see clips with fine diagonal lines, indicating that the track has been frozen. With an instrument track, you'll see something similar, but here you'll also see MIDI notes as well as an audio waveform. On an aux track, where we usually don't see any waveform information, you'll see a frozen audio clip similar to what you'd see on an audio track. This waveform represents a render of all the signals feeding that track. And finally, master faders. These are fundamentally different from any other kind of track in Pro Tools and cannot be frozen. What's happening under the hood is that Pro Tools is creating a render of the track or tracks and stores those rendered files in the rendered files subfolder. When you take a look at a frozen clip and compare it to an unfrozen clip, you might see a little difference with regard to clip length. Your eyes aren't fooling you. When needed, Pro Tools will extend the end of a clip to accommodate for things like note decays, reverbs, or delays. For folks that are technically minded, the clip will extend until the signal drops below minus 144 dB. When you freeze a track, you won't be able to change any of the frozen information. This includes clips and clip gain, elastic audio, fades, and plugins and plugin automation. With instrument tracks, you won't be able to do any MIDI editing, and frozen tracks will not even appear in the MIDI editor window. You still have some very useful flexibility though. Non-plugin automation, things like volume and pan, are still completely changeable, so you can freeze tracks and continue to make important mix decisions. I also find it nice that frozen tracks can still be selected, which is often useful in making timeline selections. So that's a basic overview. Now let's take a look at some ways to make more of this powerful new feature. If you hold down the Option key on a Mac or the Alt key on a Windows-based machine, you'll freeze all the tracks simply by freezing one. Holding Shift Option or Shift Alt and freezing one track will freeze all selected tracks. There are a few plugins out there that support multiple outputs, like Structure here. I've got 4 string parts assigned to individual aux tracks for easy mixing. When I try to freeze the structure track, Pro Tools is smart enough to know that that track is outputting to other tracks, which it calls auxiliary output stems. I can choose to freeze all of those stems in one go, or just the track that I clicked. You don't have to freeze all the inserts on a track. Just right-click on the last insert in the chain that you do want to freeze and choose Freeze up to this insert. The track will render up to and including that plugin. The plugins beyond that point and their automation won't be frozen, and you can work with them as normal. You can freeze a track and then add more plugins to it without unfreezing that track first. From a collaboration perspective, that means that I can freeze a track with the plugins that I have, send it to somebody else who's using Pro Tools 12.4 or later, and they can add their own plugins to the track without having to unfreeze it first. Here are some technical bits that might impact your workflow. Pro Tools protects the source media for frozen tracks. That means that if you have a track with a clip on it and freeze that track, that clip cannot be cleared from the clips list. This is great for making sure that you don't accidentally trash important media. Frozen files are stored in the rendered files folder, the same as rendered Elastic Audio files. This means that, from a Pro Tools perspective, these files are not considered to be permanent audio files, since a track can be unfrozen. This also means that if a frozen file is somehow missing, that Pro Tools can regenerate that frozen track, provided that the source media and plugins are all still on the system. Finally, a couple of thoughts on working collaboratively. If you get a frozen track from a collaborator who is using some plugins that you don't have, and you want to add your own plugins that they don't have, here's how you can use Track Freeze to your advantage. Add your plugin and do your work on the track, and then, instead of unfreezing and refreezing the track, use the Freeze Up to Insert feature to freeze the track. This will allow you to freeze your work on top of the already frozen track. Backwards compatibility is also something to keep in mind. If you are working with somebody who is using Pro Tools 11 or earlier, any frozen track will open up unfrozen, which is of course what you would expect. However, if you're collaborating with a person who's using an earlier version of Pro Tools 12, you might get some strange behavior, and frozen tracks might show up as partially deactivated. Nothing will have been lost, but it can be a real pain to drag clips and plugins to other tracks. The recommendation here is that if you are working with somebody else who is using Pro Tools 12, it's best if everyone is using Pro Tools version 12.4 or later, or if not, to avoid the track freeze feature altogether. And that does it for our in-depth first look into track freeze. Of course, this is only one feature in this powerful DAW. Trust me, there's a lot more to explore in Pro Tools. One great way to get a solid education in Pro Tools is through the Avid Learning Partner Program. You can learn more about it through the Avid website and send your questions to me through the email address here. And thanks again to Audio Solutions Japan for their help in creating this video. See you next time.